Welcome to the Starry-Eyed Effect. I'm Brendan.
And I'm Jen. On this podcast, we'll be chatting about all things Williams syndrome.
Ups and downs, and what it's like living with Williams syndrome.
We're excited to share our community with you. Thanks for being here.
So anyway, how are the... Yes,
put that in the recording, but...
This isn't awkward at all. Hello, everybody.
No, it's not awkward at all.
Yeah, it is a magic hat I found. Oh,
there you go.
Yes.
Oh, buddy.
Hey, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you guys.
Yeah, you too. You too.
Holidays. We squeezed in an episode in our very...
Very good.
I said that, like, I was going to say in my very busy schedule after I was just saying, like, I'm eating cookies.
Between bouts of cookies.
In your busy schedules, we squeezed in a podcast.
Sure did.
We have Brendan's mom.
My mom, woohoo! Shout out to mom, way to go.
Yeah, Anne is not only is she an amazing mom to Brendan, she's a great writer, and she's written a series of articles, and we wanted to highlight her.
Oh my gosh, very successful, and yeah, she's such an eloquent writer. Her perspective on at least what we've seen so far on her Williams syndrome journey, man, as a parent, it gives you all the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, from the parent perspective to the perspective of a person, an adult with Williams syndrome, we had Hayley Cuccinello and Toby Akbas come on to talk about the article appearing in Business Insider. Guess.
Great, because we're going to get all these businesses that are like, we want to donate to you. See how I've made that tie there?
Synergy. Synergy, everybody.
Good job. Kudos to Toby and Hayley. This was a great article. If you haven't seen it, Joel, I believe, is going to post the link so you can check out the article and then listen to the podcast, because it's really behind the scenes of how that all came to be.
Hayley also mentions in the interview about another disorder that's kind of very near in the genome, I guess, from Williams syndrome, and she couldn't remember the name of it in the interview, but it is AUTS2 syndrome. So that's what she was referring to, and I certainly haven't heard of that, but I will be looking that up. And I just wanted to put that in there so that Hayley's comments get clarified.
Hey, well, we should tag that community so they can listen to our story.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the interviews. And in the interim, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to the two of you, and
happy holidays to our community.
Yeah, thank you all, dear listeners. Thank you for listening to the show in 20. We launched it this year. We appreciate everybody who has taken the time to listen and watch and comment and email. It means the world to I think I speak on behalf of Jen.
Feedback and everything, and all the the private messages that I've been getting from friends and fans of the show, and how much it just really meant a lot.
It's your destiny.
Yeah, it's been really cool, and I'm very thankful for you two, and 2020 and beyond. Let's go.
Yep.
Let's go.
All right. Well, hey, Mom, how are ya?
Hey, bud. Good. Doing good.
Good. For those who don't know who you are my mom, but I will let you introduce yourself and let you tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yes, I am Brendan's mom. That is my great good fortune in this life. And I am also a grandmother, and I've done a lot of things in my life, which has been sort of long. But I started out my passion has always been writing. And that's what I started as a reader and I lived in book world when I was a kid, and then from there, it came kind of naturally to me. And when I got to college, I went into a special program that kind of fostered that a lot. And I went to Simmons College in Boston, and I ended up majoring in writing. Not much creative writing, a lot of communications, history, literature studies and things, and minoring in illustration. And then I got out of college and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have anything original to say or write. So I went back to school for music, which I had been just like a guitar strummer for, many years. And I started studying jazz guitar and did that for a couple of years. And then I had some things to write about. So that's how I got back into the writing, was doing some, feature stories and journalism pieces on musicians, and it's for local papers and some magazines and things like that. So, and Brendan's sister was born when I was still in, right before I went back to music school, I think. And then when Brendan was born, I had always wanted to write a children's book. That was one of my sort of like threads that I followed in college. Simmons has a children's literature program, and I didn't go into it. It was just kind of in the seedling stage at that point. But it was part of my personal independent studies and things. So I had been incubating it for a long time, and then when Brendan was born, I don't know. The words came back, and I felt like I had something original. So that particular book still is not published 50 years later, or however many years. But it got me writing, and so that was kind of my path. Brendan was born in 1987. My first book was accepted in 1991 from publishers, and then so all through the 90s was when I was publishing. And they were kind of across the spectrum in children's literature. I had 2 young adult novels that did pretty well, and some middle grade novels, sort of slice of life, and a couple of and a fantasy trilogy about fairies, which I took sort of an elemental, environmental slant on, and then some easy readers. And Brendan was always such a big supporter for me. He used to go to the post office with me to get my rejection letters, and I can remember I said something after reading one on the steps of the post office, and they said, well, I guess I'm just your mom. And he said, no, you're my writer mom. And I was like, thank you. Right.
I didn't know that you were that was like really your career before, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, what do you call them, your essay pieces that you're writing on Williams syndrome. But I mean, well before you knew about Williams syndrome, you were writing.
Yes. All my life. Really. I mean, and I kept journals through all the years, but also, I mean, while I was writing books, I was also doing that. And but when Brendan was diagnosed, which was in 2000, January, I think, of 2000, that was the year my last book was published. It was already, done. It just came out in 2000, and I've always been a research type person. So even for the books that I did a lot of research.
Sure.
I just wanted to know what. So this Williams syndrome. What is it? And so there were not a whole. There were like 1,500 med lit articles at the time back then. So this would have been around 2000, and you had to pay for them. You had to buy them through this library, which I did. There was nothing like the availability of information that there is today. But I got the ones that I could, and I started writing about Williams syndrome and Brendan and Williams syndrome, and just sort of about every aspect of this. So I started trying to put things together, and I probably wrote about 400 pages over the years,
Well, the reason why we have you on the show is not just because you're Brendan's mom, although that is cool. That's the number one reason, right? The number two reason is because you have started to publish some of maybe the essays that you wrote. So you wrote these a while ago, or did you write them recently?
Well, I wrote the,
parts of them.
In 2000, I had a 67-page sort of of that period, as much as I knew up to then. So there's, and it was kind of roughly in this order, and sort of the span of time is from, when Brendan was born, and then when we found out he had Williams syndrome, and we had gone to the Detroit Williams syndrome convention in 2000 to just and that's where we met all kinds of people, and we were just like, oh my God, we didn't bring Brendan with us because we didn't know what to expect, and we were like overflowing with information and welcoming, and we were like, oh, we wish we brought him. And so anyways, that's the span of this. It goes to there's another 7 or 8 sections, and it's that first week at music camp, and then the first week in 7th grade.
I want to mention that so you recently started publishing some essays through a site called Medium, and I want to make sure we talk about it. It's called Being and Becoming, a Williams Syndrome Memoir, which is a video. And I've followed it, and I've read through many of the articles. You are a great writer. It's so interesting because you and I share a similar journey in the sense that Stella wasn't diagnosed until she was 5. And so I definitely remember, people are like, how did you not know until she was 5? Well, there were definitely things along the way, but none of them ever really culminated in your child has Williams syndrome. So a lot of your articles like, oh, we have the heart murmur. Oh, it's going away. It's going to resolve. And then, oh, now we have a hernia. And now we have a second hernia, a third hernia. I definitely can resonate with the feelings that you explain and you describe so eloquently in your essays. So I know that this first part is just kind of the foray into, Brendan and all of the things that kind of happened before Williams syndrome. And the next part, I'm assuming, is going to be like that deeper dive into how many have you published so far?
Well, actually, I think it's like 11 or 12, but because some of them are like A, B, and C.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Because they're sort of topical. I mean, my organizational scheme is sort of there's the first puzzle. What does this mean? And what was around that? And sort of with Brendan's development running through it. And okay, here's another sort of puzzling thing. And again, I don't want to I don't want to, I mean, I have an outline. It's all outlined and it's substantially written. And what I'm mostly doing now is going back and, I have a much different lens now looking at these things than I did. And I have, I have all my journals. I have the things that I used to. I have I have had to excavate the attic. There's so much paper there.
And I just spotted and while she was doing that.
Oh yeah.
Well, you're writing these essays, right? And I figured you probably were journaling, and I admire people who journal so much. I'm always like, I should journal, and then I just never do it. But it's been really important, right? So as you're writing these essays, you're looking back on those times and reading what you wrote.
Yeah, and checking for accuracy of memory, and just checking to see, Brendan, I was 33 when Brendan was born. I was 45 when he was diagnosed, and I'm such a different person now, and I just, it's been so there's certain things that I notice that my voice is changing, my writer's voice is changing a little bit, not a little bit, again, the material is so from the heart, that I want it to be, I don't want to sanitize the emotion out of it or anything, so what really kind of happened was, this, as the internet has evolved and these different writing platforms have evolved, way back when I did a little bit of a blog on WordPress, but now they really have the the platforms for a piece like this that is serial writing. It's one of my things that I was really interested in what literature was when I was in college, was Victorian literature and Dickens and Hardy and all those guys who publish things serially. And that's been an interesting experience for me. It's like, I feel like I'm committed to producing a column every week.
What I think is also interesting about your writing is that you are writing it in the lens of like it happening. So you said Brendan was born in 87.
Yeah.
And you really didn't find out until 95? Oh, 2000. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, you know, when we talk about that, as that lines up with when Williams syndrome was like discovered and when like the research and all this work, medically speaking, started happening in the Williams syndrome community, it's a very similar timeline. So like you were as everybody else was learning too. And like fast forward 20 years later, that's all evolved. But at the time you were just going off of what was known, which was not
right. And so that's why I'm, you know, it's kind of, it's sort of, I mean, for me, it's been a little bit of like a natural history kind of a thing, but it's definitely a memoir. And so that's why, you know, the interesting thing for me, and a little bit tricky to navigate here and there, is going back and forth in time and having it still maintain the forward flow just through reading it, you know. That's been one of the most enjoyable parts of this process for me, is kind of weaving that together into something that feels current, but is also, you know, retrospective. And
I always read it first. I always at least read it once or twice. Yeah. And give my feedback also.
And also, mothers can sometimes overshare, which I have been known to do. I certainly have been known to do. That was one of the things in one of the podcasts that you and Joe were talking about. You know, we're not talking about everything because, you know, you shouldn't, you know, and I think it's not just privacy issues, but it's also like, look, this is what we're talking about. And we know there's all this other stuff here, but that's not what we're talking about, you know? So that's,
and it's been eye-opening and also really cool to like read everything and like relive those experiences. I mean, it is emotional and, you know, it makes me feel some type of way sometimes, but it's my truth. And I feel like it needs to be out there.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you include little baby photos because they're just my favorite. You're like, baby Brendan is so cute. So cute.
Oh, we have many upon many photos.
Oh, yes, we do. We got bins and bins.
Right. So I love that you're sharing this journey from your perspective, because I think that's what we as parents like so desperately want to like read and hear and resonate with. Like I said, I think I was reading your stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I think I can imagine very vividly the feelings that you felt, because I think although different, shared, you know, very similar feelings along the way. I don't know if you would want to share. I mean, Brendan, you shared about it before briefly, but maybe you and your mom could talk about it, just how you got diagnosed.
6th grade was very tough for you. And just because middle school is so much tougher, there's so much more, there's the cognitive load is more, the organizational load is more, and kids are getting mean. They're starting to get into this hierarchy of, you know, alphas and they're just, and so we were seeing a therapist to try and, you know, figure out how to cope with some of these things. And that was the first time. I mean, I think Brendan has talked about, you know, he has been diagnosed with ADHD, and that was in elementary school. And, you know, they had the Ritalin for a while. And I found my journal from that period of time. It was like, we took him off in the summer, and that was like, he's just himself again. He's happy again. It's just,
it was completely night and day. Like
it was. Well, you just such a roller coaster, you know.
I was on such another level. It was crazy.
It was a roller coaster for you. It was so unfair.
And to be, you know, diagnosed like that, it sucked.
Yeah, it was there, and there was a lot of changes going on in your life at that point. We had just moved, all kinds of things. But so anyways, by the time we went off the Ritalin, we were seeing this counselor, and Brendan was depressed, you know, and with the way things were going. It's a sad boy, and in spite of everything that it always, he was a sparkly boy, he used to, still is. But, that was the first time, I mean, he was just aware of differences and that he was struggling. And so this counselor said, ignorance isn't necessarily bliss. There may be some interventions that would be helpful to Brendan. And what he didn't know anything about Williams syndrome, but what he said was maybe a thing called pervasive developmental delay not otherwise specified. But by that time, we had had the phone call about the special on TV from one of the teachers, teacher and the nurse, I think. They might have called me together. That was another fact I had to check who called first. But so I mentioned that, and he said he thought we should do the genetic testing. So we did, and we went to the genetics lab. Was the same hospital where he had all his hernia surgeries and where his heart doctor was connected with, but they didn't. Medical records weren't interconnected. There was no my chart or things like that back then. So the departments, one was one end of the campus, one was the other end of the campus. So we decided, okay, we'll go have the test, and that will be one of the story of Brendan's experience and what I had to do to bribe him. Because it was,
man.
I know. But I had to go give a speech for one of the, it was actually National Council of Teachers of English. And the speech was about Brendan. In large part, it started out, I'm seeing signs of trouble. He was always a bad sleeper. I may actually excerpt that and put it in because it was just before we knew, and we hadn't gotten the test. And when I came home, we got the test, and then in mid-January we found out. So that was that wasn't the smoothest thing either, because the information, the facts transmittal wasn't either all the pages didn't go through to his pediatrician, or I don't know. Maybe it ran out of paper. I don't know. There was some missing information, and we thought that we didn't have, that we didn't have an answer. He said, no, there's 46 chromosomes. That's normal. And so I called the WSA again for the second time, and they said, well, that's okay. He sounds enough like he has Williams that we could probably help you, which was the kind of, I don't know. I think I felt it was kind of grassrootsy back then in a wonderful way,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's grown too.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, again, you have all of these things kind of happening, right, throughout, like, Brendan, your early life, and then, to be diagnosed at 13, and I assume your life has changed so much since then from the diagnosis point. So you're helping your mom, right? Like write these, she's writing articles, you're editing. What are the things that you're telling your mom, Brendan, that you want her to include, or like things that you don't want her to include? Like, what are your hot buttons?
I just want her to tell my truth, from not only my perspective, but like her perspective as well. And there hasn't really been anything that I've wanted edited out. I always read it. Excuse me. It's been really cool to be part of that whole process and be able to read it before it goes up. And, it's also been really cool and really nice to see all the positive feedback. It's really, really been nice,
Yeah, because it was not an easy road in many ways.
No.
And I'm sure you know, and I would say the teen years, the struggle was real,
It really was.
Feeling it right now.
Yeah, and I've always tried to not really be super vulnerable, online and let people into my world too much.
Yeah.
But not because I don't want to. It's just, boundaries and,
right.
all those kinds of things. But it's really cool to like have my mom tell my truth in a different light and a different positive way. I'm really appreciative of it.
Well, looking back through these old eyes with glasses, I tend to try and find the positive.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's a better way to view life.
Well, believe it or not, I think we're already at our end of our time.
I just want to say, like, I've always had this mindset, like, yes, I'm disabled, but I don't let my disability define me or who I am as a person. And also, I've always been the type of person to be like, well, you can do anything if you put your mind to it, disabled or not, So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, it's awesome. And I totally agree with you. And I hope that more people in general have that same mindset. So I love this. I love you and your mom like doing this together. I love this perspective that you're sharing with us, Anne. And you guys are, again, just like spreading awareness, right, through like new and creative avenues. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love this podcast, in many ways, and even if I wasn't blessed with my co-hosting son, I would still love it. And you're doing a fabulous job.
Hey, Toby. Hey, Hayley. How are you guys?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yes, very happy to be here.
So, for those who don't know who you two are, why don't you guys both introduce yourselves and tell everyone a little bit about yourselves and what you do?
Sure. Toby, I can go first if you'd like. So I'm Hayley Cuccinello. I'm a finance reporter at Business Insider. I've been here for about 3 years. Before that, I was at Forbes for 5. So you're probably thinking, why on earth did this lady write about Williams syndrome if she covers finance? But, I've always had an interest in psychology. And in college, I, as a research assistant with children with suicidal ideation. So when this opportunity came to write about, this wonderful, remarkable community, I leapt at it.
And I am Toby Akbas. I am 22 and I have Williams syndrome. And I'm a firefighter. I have, and I am also a second-degree black belt in karate. So I've been doing that for firefighting 6 years, karate around 12 to 13 years. So yes, that is me.
And you both are in New York?
Yes.
So the article, you guys, as you mentioned, Hayley, you wrote an article that just was published recently about Williams syndrome, and really the I guess main person that you interviewed or shadowed was Toby. And you're right. So you said, the minute you said I'm a finance writer, I'm like, how on earth did you get this topic? So I would love to hear, like, how did this topic come up for the Insider in the first place? And how did it then trickle its way into your lap?
Sure. So we were, as a newsroom, asked to write about modern loneliness. And, there's a lot of reporting about that. I think there's even some reports out there that like 30% of Americans don't trust each other. And there's so many factors that feed into loneliness. And at first I was kind of like, okay, I could write about AI girlfriends or dating apps or, there's like a lot of, when you're, I've been doing this for, I guess, 8-9 years now as a reporter, I can kind of like see the angles in my head. And I was like, nothing really feels quite right or unique. And then I thought of, people with Williams syndrome. I watched a lot of videos of people with Williams on SBSK, which is a fantastic platform.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know if they'll let me do this. I was like, they might say, like, what on earth is this disorder? What on earth are your credentials to write this? How on earth are you going to use a rare genetic condition as a lens for like the human condition,
Right.
But I pitched it the best I could. And I knew from the get-go, like I needed a star, a hero of the story. And I think it was around August, and I went on Facebook, and I'm a professional stalker, right, as a reporter. And I was looking at posts about Williams syndrome, and I think that was the month after that special day where like the digits of the date
Yes.
line up with that gene deletion, right? Or something like that.
11.3.
Yeah. And I just saw Toby's photo and his post. And it wasn't like a very long post, but it was just him standing in front of, I think it was like a Compass Realty storefront. And he's wearing a striped shirt. And I was just like, yeah, I think this is the guy. I think this is good. You just sort of, you can't really explain it as a reporter. You just, and then I found out more, and that sort of solidified it. The firefighting thing, also living pretty close to me thing, made it a lot easier. And so being at, age 22 seemed really appropriate as well, because a lot of stories about Williams syndrome focus on children, which is great. But I really wanted to focus on the story of adults, and picking someone who was kind of in between the two felt right. And then fortunately, I got the full support of the newsroom to do it, and I'm really glad it happened.
So you stalked Toby, and then you reached out to him and you were like, I want to do this article. Toby, like when you first got contacted by Hayley, what was your thought?
So I wasn't first contacted by Hayley. My fire chief contacted me and was like, hey, so I'm calling you for a good reason. And he's like, there's this person from Insider who wants to do a story about you and like Williams syndrome and stuff like that. And I was in from the moment I heard about it. And I was very excited because, you guys have had Callie Truelove on here. You've had Alexandra Birch. You've had a lot of different people on here that I know of. And for me to actually get the opportunity to share my story a little bit and have it published in a big article is something that I never thought of that would happen. And now that it actually did happen, it's crazy. I mean, I've enjoyed every minute of doing that article. And yeah, so it was exciting. It was definitely an exciting thing.
I'm glad to hear that being peppered with questions.
Yeah. You were like, let's go, let's do this. So you guys met?
Yes.
Okay.
We talked on Zoom, on Google Meet, and then a couple weeks later, I went up to Garrison, New York to see Toby and his family.
Okay. How far is that from you?
It's about an hour on the train. So pretty easy, especially because like Toby, I can't drive. So that was quite convenient.
You can't drive, or you don't want to drive?
I don't know how to.
Okay.
So hopefully one day I will learn. I'm 31. There's still time.
There's still time.
But yeah.
I think that you really did a good job of touching on some of the challenges of what it's like living with a super friendly, highly social personality, especially in this fast-paced world. So I'd love to hear you and Toby talk about just how you structured, like how you decided on the content, what your first impressions were of meeting each other, and how you decided to be so open and honest to talk about some of the things that come with being an adult with a disability.
I can speak to the picking the content and sort of structuring it. And then Toby, you can tell me all about what it was like to meet this person, have her pry into every aspect of your life.
Sounds good.
If that sounds good.
Yes.
So, story structure, that's something you kind of, figure out after the main reporting trip. But I knew that I wanted to explore the growth from childhood to adulthood with a focus on the unique challenges of adulthood. And when I approached Toby and his mom, I did make it pretty clear that this is a story about Williams syndrome and loneliness. This wasn't a story just about Williams syndrome. I think that's, there's a lot of really wonderful articles about Williams syndrome, and it touches on that, obviously, but I wanted to be very clear, like, this is not a story about how happy and wonderful it is all the time to have Williams. It's about a challenge and about a specific aspect of it. And Toby and his family have been wonderful about being open and honest about, their experiences and their hopes and their dreams and everything in between. So, as a reporter, that makes my job a lot easier when the subjects are so warm and welcoming and ready to be vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Toby, you were all like, just I'll do whatever you say, Hayley, right?
I'm gonna speak about so when I first knew that she was coming to the house, I was a little apprehensive at first because the thing with my anxiety is like new people, new places. I don't really do well with that until I get comfortable. And I was thinking, there's this person that's coming to my house, which I know about, but the questions were a lot to answer. Like there was so many questions to answer. And
yes.
Yeah.
And at some times I had to really think about what I wanted to say because there was a lot of thinking, and I think a lot before. Like you have to, when you're talking anyone really, you just have to think about what you're gonna say because like I'm a sensitive person. Like anything that I find that is not good could pose a threat and be like I could get emotional from it. So I never knew what was going to be asked. But as the 3 days went by, I trusted her because I knew what she was doing and my family knew what she was doing also. So it was easier to go from there at first. The first day I had anxiety, I'll be honest. I mean, the first day was anxious, ready to do this. And then the second day was just like, okay, it's easy. It's an easy day, nothing too crazy. Then she actually came to my firehouse and my dojo that I was talking about in the beginning. So she came to the dojo and met all of my instructors that I work with on a daily basis. I mean, they were so open and honest from what I heard, and being with my chief, who I've known for a very long time, he was also very open and honest about things that he's gathered from my experience from the firehouse and everything. To have that both together is a great thing, and trust me, I would, if anybody had the opportunity to do this again, if I had the opportunity to be interviewed by SBSK, which I've wanted for so long, like I've been looking into that for so long, and that would be really cool to have happen. And just, but yes, I was anxious and I was not ready, and then I became my regular self after a while and was just okay with it. So yeah, it was just.
Do you see, Toby, or if you can remember when you were younger, do you think that your anxiety has gotten worse as you've gotten older? Have you noticed that as you've gotten older, that you're just more discerning of who you let in?
Yes, I have trust issues from different things. And I think when I was younger, I was okay. I was not as anxious as I am now. To be honest, every day I'm waking up anxious, and it feels like I can't understand why I'm waking up anxious, but it's just the thing that happens. And today I was like, okay, I have this going on today. So I knew I had stuff going on, but my mind just gets in the way of things a lot of the time, and it just causes me to just overthink. And I think that's what the problem is. And I just have to breathe through it. And it's hard to do that sometimes. And I think Brendan can also attest to that because we both have the same thing, and I guess that might happen with him. I don't know. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, especially like if I have like a stomach ache for whatever reason, then I get like really anxious and I'm like, oh my God. And then it goes on for like the whole entire day. It doesn't make anything better. It doesn't solve anything. I just get in my head a little bit, and then I just realize, okay, you're fine. Chill out. Relax. Everything's cool. You're not gonna get sick again. Don't worry about it. Just let it go. And then I let it go, and it's fine. I'm like, dude, no.
As I've started to look out across like the life spectrum of people with Williams syndrome. I definitely think I see adults, like you were saying, Hayley, like struggling with Williams syndrome, struggling with loneliness, struggling with anxiety, struggling with isolation to some degree. And it is so hard as a parent. One of the things I'm going, when I read your article, one of the things that you mentioned in it was how you had left Toby and you found yourself like missing your interactions, right? Like, and I was so glad that you wrote that part in, or kept that part into your article. I know it was much larger and you had to edit it down, but in the Williams syndrome community in general, there is so much there, right? There's so much care, there's so much concern, there's so much genuineness and authenticity. And I mean, I can come off of a call with adults with Williams syndrome feeling like so happy and so positive and so cared for and so loved. And it's because people with Williams syndrome, I think, really do care about the people they're interacting with, and they have this unique ability to connect, right? So when you as a person are willing to connect and meet them where they are, you get so much more in return. And so, like I said, I love that you talked about that, because I think oftentimes in society we're scared of that interaction because we don't know how it's going to work, or if it's going to be clunky in terms of building a friendship with somebody with a disability. But, you know, for you, I'm sure you were surprised, because when you did reach out and you made that connection, there was something there that, I don't know, made you feel connected and important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the first, Toby gave me a tour of his house and whatnot. And then I think we described this in the story. Toby gave me a Toby tip was, get out of your comfort zone. And he acknowledged he was out of his comfort zone. And then he kind of picked up on, I think, a little bit of my anxiety, because, I haven't really done a reporting trip like this in a long time, partly because of COVID, partly because with business stories, it's usually not as necessary. But and he said, and maybe you're out of your comfort zone too. And I was like, this guy is pretty perceptive. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I did know, from watching a lot of videos and a documentary and reading a lot, that there were going to be moments that really touched me. And, there were going to be, there are some things that I'd also spoken to a couple people with Williams syndrome, I think, before I'd visited Toby, including Brendan.
Okay.
But when I left Garrison, pretty quickly I was like, it's really nice being able to spend so much time with somebody that's just really invested in your presence. And it's not just because of like who I am or, because of his story. It's just because of who Toby is, which is this remarkable, caring person, and, Toby is discerning, and, he does have some trust issues, but the truth is that Toby, you also, I think you have this kind of unconditional care, let's say, for other people.
It's so true.
I would definitely agree with the caring part, because throughout my life, there's been people who have come and gone and just been there for specific parts. But even though they came when they came and left when they did, I still care, because they made that impact on me that I could make on them. So it's always nice to care and just be like, okay, I know what this person's going through. Like, I can understand that. And yeah, it's very nice to have that caring, understanding feeling from both sides of me and Hayley both.
So the article came out, like I mentioned, a few days ago. What has your experience been since then? I'm sure, Toby, you're blowing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you saying?
I want to hear Toby's story first, because I'm sure Toby's an influencer now with 5 brand deals, and he's going to get a documentary, and I just want to hear all about it. So I can be like, I'm the first one to discover him.
So the thing about the story coming out at a good time was because it just came out on Wednesday night, and I went to, so my brother surprised me with Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets for a Wednesday night show, and I've never been, but that was such a great show. And then, having the story happen having the story come out in the same day was overwhelming at first. Like I was anxious about it coming out. I wasn't sure what was going to be on there. You never, like, the things I said, and who knows if it's going to be on the story, but
Yeah.
just to see the past 24 to 36 hours have been a lot of love and a lot of care and just really crazy things that I was not expecting at first. I thought that, okay, this is going to go out and that's it. It's not going to, we worked on this for so long, and, but my headspace was at the wrong place at that time. Now I realize that it's crazy. I'm getting messages left and right talking about anxiety, talking about how much impact the stories made on other people, and it's just great because that's what I was hoping from it. I was hoping that even you guys with Williams syndrome that will watch this, you guys have anxiety just like me, and you might deal with it differently. But I hope that what I said kind of gave you a glimpse of how I deal with it and how you guys can help me in the future. Because there will be times where my anxiety gets too bad and that I won't even know what to do. So, but yes, I think that this was the topping on the cake for early Christmas presents left and right. I mean, this has been such a great experience, and I look forward to the next couple of days seeing what happens with the story and how it goes, and just looking on my Facebook with a surprised face and being like, whoa, this is crazy. Because that's been my reaction every time, seeing my friends share it and then their friends share it and just go bonkers, which is something that doesn't happen a lot with me. I don't get a lot of things that go crazy in the same day amount of time frame. So it's amazing. It's really amazing to see that our story, my story and what Hayley and her team did really well. Yeah, it really is amazing.
Well, get used to it, Tobes, because you're a celebrity now.
Yeah.
He was always very popular in our community, but now we're shooting you out to the rest of the world.
It's skyrocket, bro. It's gonna go from here to like up there.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, Toby and his parents spend a lot of time answering questions and obviously with the visit over these months. And I'm really glad to hear that after all those questions, the outcome has been worth it and been rewarding. On my end, I've gotten a few messages from parents. It's interesting. I mean, they're very touching. One woman wrote in saying that her middle-aged son with Williams, that she feels like she can really understand him better and his challenges, and she thinks that it will help her be more patient with him in the future, and she's very thankful. Interestingly, I've also gotten 2 messages from moms of kids with this very rare genetic deletion that isn't Williams syndrome, but the genes deleted are right next to the ones deleted with Williams.
22q?
It might, I don't think, maybe it is. I should really look it up on my phone. And they said, there's very little information about it. Most of the research is on like zebrafish and mice. And they said I think one said, this story is the closest thing we'll get to a time machine to know what my son will be like. And it'll help me advocate for him in school because, I don't want him to have a educational experience where it's him just separate from everybody. He loves people. He really wants to, meet other kids in school and not be excluded. And she was like, I really appreciate having something I can show people to, convince the school system that he deserves more. So that's been really tremendous for me. Let me put it this way. When I profiled the new CEO of Morgan Stanley, this did not happen. So it's been very touching for me to get all of this.
My hope, really, and I'm sure you heard this from many parents, is that, as our kids grow up, we want them to be a part of the community. And you mentioned it in the article, and I did want to touch on it, that, you know, like, not just a part of the community, like, hey, there's Stella or there's Toby, and, you know, they're in our community, right? But like, I want Stella to be asked to go to the movies. I want Stella to go to the bar when she's 21 and have drinks with her friends. How do we get people to embrace those with disabilities beyond surface level?
That is a wonderful question that I do not know how to answer. All I can sort of is speak to my perspective. I mean,
from your heart, girl.
We all have the choice to include people with disabilities more in our lives. We all have that choice. It doesn't mean that it is always easy or the most natural thing. Like, that is something that, as a reporter and as like a person, I, you know, took a lot of care and research into that before I sort of embarked on this. And I think that's sort of what, you know, people who, you know, want to be more inclusive, that's something, it's okay to kind of admit, like, you know, I don't really, is this going to offend you, right? Or is this something I shouldn't do? Or like, what should I do if X, Y, and Z happens? Like, just sort of having the humility to admit that, you know, you don't maybe know how to handle a situation all the time, and also be willing to, you know, accept that maybe something might happen. You'll have to apologize, or you'll have to figure out how to handle it differently. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I guess it's just taking the time to research things and prepare, and just be willing to have moments that are not perfect, or to learn, you know. Anyways, that's my...
I love it. No, that's perfect. I always can talk about it from my perspective as a mom, right? But I think it's important for somebody, like, but I'm connected to this person. So I'm like, let me tell you all the things that I think that make it easy to befriend a person with disability. But I'm a parent of a person with a disability. So I think sometimes my view is poo-pooed. So having in everything you said was right? Like, it's okay to embark on a friendship that isn't perfect, that you're learning, that you is going to take time, right? Maybe even more time than like a traditional friendship. But if you're willing to invest the work and be patient, not only, you know, in the relationship, but with yourself, right? That it's going to pay dividends. So I think your answer was spot on. Well, what's next? I know we have to wrap up. But do you guys want to share any last thoughts about the article, or what you want people to take away from it?
I think what I want people to take away from this article is that people with disabilities can change things a lot, change lives a lot too.
Yeah.
Just from me speaking about anxiety and how that's impacted me a lot has really helped other people. And I'm like, I get what you're saying there. It's just, again, I've said it a lot of times today, but it's just been amazing to see people reaching out and just being like, this is what your story did for me. And what I want to see happen in the future with this story is I might do a meet and greet at the convention in Phoenix, because a lot of people have been saying that they want to meet and just like, but what I want to see happen is that it grows more and gets shared more, and this episode gets shared throughout the community also, to show that, you know, even with my different challenges with karate and firefighting being challenges a lot too, you know, you're still able to do things. But one tip I have for everybody is don't, we say this a lot in my friend groups, listen to your heart, not your head, because the heart, both can cause a little bit of not sure, like uncomfortable feelings. And I think that mostly I think with my heart and my head at the same time sometimes. So if you're thinking about a hard decision, think with the heart, because that will help you understand what you have to do more. that's it for me, honestly.
And that's the Toby-tastic tip of the day.
I think that is the tip of the day.
Yes, that is my tip of the day. Think with here. No, think with here, not with here.
Here, right here, bud.
Yes, right here.
This story, as I mentioned, it's gone from 7,000 word to 3,500. And while I'm so pleased that so many people have written in to say that, it's comprehensive and really captured so many things, I just wanted to acknowledge, I hope that this is sort of a starting point to talk about more of the complexities in the community. It's unfortunate I didn't really get to talk about the fact that there's autistic people in the Williams syndrome community. I didn't really get to touch a lot on the experiences of people with higher support needs. And, those were things I learned about, and I learned about other, sort of issues that the community faces and other sort of intersectional issues. And, if I could, I'd write a book. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of acknowledge that, those people exist and they are worthy. And I hope that, that other people can help spread awareness of that.
Now, I want to thank Hayley and her team again for making this happen, and my friends in the Williams syndrome community, my friends who are not in the Williams syndrome community but support me every day doing what I love to do. Thank you all so much. I'm beaming with happiness right now. This means a lot.
You've been listening to The Starry-Eyed Effect, presented by the Williams Syndrome Association. The show is hosted by Jennifer Keaton and Brendan Lemieux, and produced by me, Joel Listman. Theme song by Tommy Barbarella and Mariella Elm. Got a question for the show? Email us at podcast@williams-syndrome.org. Video version of the podcast available on the Williams Syndrome channel on YouTube. Review us on Apple Podcasts, and maybe it will get featured on a future episode. Make sure to like and subscribe to The Starry-Eyed Effect wherever you get your podcast delights.